Peace to the 12, back with yet another controversial video. Y'all see the title. It's the Forgotten Black Irish Clans of Ireland. Alright, I repeat, the Forgotten Black Irish Clans of Ireland. Okay, that's a controversial title for a controversial video. And this is actually a piggyback off of a video I made 3 days ago titled Mexicans Spoke Hebrew Before Spanish, which I proved without a shadow of a doubt that they did according to many scholars, authors, and writings from the 1700s and on down. But anyway, so in that video, I was quoting Godfrey Higgins, who said that the people of Ireland had a similar name to the Aztecs word for the word God, which was similar to the word Alleluia, But and I said that, and I stated in that video at that part that the original inhabitants of Ireland were so-called black people, and then I said that's according to not Godfrey Higgins, that's according to David McRitchie, an anthropologist in the 1800s, and I have other sources as well in this video. So when I made that comment, this guy CJ, with all them other words, all them other letters, he stated the original inhabitants were not black in Ireland. Remember, black people really don't like cold weather. And I've heard this same take growing up. I heard the same take when I used to study geology, when I studied climates, continents, and so on and so forth. There's a general statement that is made by a lot of people, an incorrect statement at that so-called black people do not live in cold environments, and nor can they live in cold environments, which I'm going to disprove at the end of this video. But the first part of this video is really solely going to be me proving that, yes, the original inhabitants of Ireland were so-called black people, according to Caucasian scholars. Okay? According to Caucasian historians and anthropologists and geologists, the original inhabitants of Ireland were, yes, so-called black people. Okay? And I'm going to prove that in this video. I'll address this comment at another time. But, so I'm going to kick this off with Proverbs 25:2. It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings to search out a matter. All right, and I searched this matter out, and without a shadow of a doubt, I want to prove it. And it sounds like a hot take, but it really ain't a hot take. It's just a take that is known and not mentioned. It's hidden. Okay. Anyway, we're going to touch on this guy, but I'm going to get back to him in a minute. David McRitchie, born in the 1800s. He was born in the mid-1800s, 1851. He wrote a series of books titled Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 1 and Volume 2. He was an anthropologist. And in Ancient and Modern Britons, he talks about that there was an aboriginal race that occupied the British Isles, all right, before the Celts and other groups arrived. This is really an incorrect take because he mentions the Celts. Okay, but what is considered the British Isles, you might ask? Well, that is a group of islands off the northwestern coast of Europe. Great Britain, Ireland, the British Isles, Great Britain, Ireland. I'll throw in Scotland, Wales. That whole place, right? But we're going to touch on that first. But before we get into his works, being Ancient and Modern Britons, and I have other authors as well that I will be including in this video. Before we even get to that, like I told you, it's known that the original inhabitants of Europe were so-called black people. Believe it or not, it's known, because even when you get on the Google machine, even when you Google it, right, and you get on that Google machine, or you just type in on Google, the first people of Europe were black. Type that in, look what pops up. First thing, it says, the archaeological, anthropological, and genetic evidence indicated that the first Europeans, let me highlight that. And once again, it's documented. The first Europeans were dark sub-Saharan Africans who carried mtDNA haplogroup N and Y chromosomes C6 into Europe. First result that pops up. So it's archaeologically, anthropologically, and genetically proven that the first inhabitants of Europe were so-called black people. Okay. Meanwhile, I get all these cave commenters, these cavemen who want to comment that I'm somehow lying and I don't have my own culture, so I'm just gonna steal other people's cultures and yada yada yada, all that other stuff. It really doesn't matter because I don't really give a shit about cave comments. Their opinions mean nothing to me. My videos, as always, are completely directed towards the 12 tribes of Israel. But anyway, so the first Europeans were dark sub-Saharan Africans according to the Scientific Research Publishing. Okay, in other words, they were so-called black. Even all right, then you go down to other venues. It says first modern Britons had dark to black skin. Cheddar Man, Daily Mail. Europeans were dark skinned until 8,000 years ago. I'm gonna debunk that in a minute. Turns out the first British people were actually black. So it ain't no debate. Even on the Google machine, it'll tell you that. Look, Daily Mail. Africans were in Britain before the English. Cheddar Man Discovery, first modern Briton on the Independent, had dark skin. As a reminder, we are all from Africa, expert says. Now, what they like to try to do is they like to try to tell you that the black people that were in the continent of Europe and other places, yes, they were black, but over time they evolved, quote unquote evolved, which is a lie. That they evolved white skin to adapt to the cold climate, which is a lie. You're going to find out that the other group of people that are in these other places are not evolved people, they're invaders. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Now let's go back to David McRitchie once again. David McRitchie, Ancient Modern Britons, Volume 1 and 2. Anthropologist. What is an anthropologist? Anthropology is the study of the origin and development of human societies and cultures. All right, so the origin of development of human societies and cultures. Now let's see what he has to say about these British Isles. All right, I'm going to go through all the highlighted portions like I always do for sake of time. If you want to read the whole page, you can pause the video. You can screenshot it, you do what you need to do. All right, so we're going to go to page 7 of Volume 1 of Ancient Modern Britons. All right, we're going to try to speed through this because I got like 130 slides, something like that. So we're going to try to speed through it. I'm going to slide 13. We're going to moderately speed through it, though, okay? So page 7 down here. It says, the importance of studying this Tasmanian section of the Australoid division is very important. Not only does Mr. Huxley argue from the appearance of certain existing Britons that they represent in a degree a British race of Australoid type, but there are visible and tangible proofs of the previous existence in our island of such a people. So the Australoid race, in other words, like an Aboriginal Australian, right? These are Aboriginal Australians. Aboriginal Australians. He states that yes, they were the original British race was of an Australoid type. All right. These proofs are craniological. Okay, meaning they have the exact same skulls. Okay. Now, he states. This is page 7 if I didn't say it already. We know, says the writer of a small pamphlet on the subject, that the first inhabitants, he says, we know that the first inhabitants of Britain, and then he tries to throw in his own thing. Let us say certain tribes of ancient Britons. No, it's all of them. But, he states, we know that the first inhabitants of Britain, and more especially those of the northern parts, were craniologically of a type approaching to the Negro or to the Australian race. In the autumn of 1865, and he talks about a guy who also went on this. But he straight up says that the first inhabitants of Britain were a Negro or an Australoid race. All right, you see that point blank. Notice he didn't say Caucasian. He didn't say Aryan. He didn't say none of that. He didn't say Indo-European. So that's like I told you, man. Yes, the original tribe. These are the forgotten, not mentioned tribes, the Black Irish clans, man. And I have a lot of proof on this, man. I don't be just blowing smoke, right? So anyway, the skulls found in chambered mounds in Great Britain, and which Dr. Daniel Wilson refers to as being those of the earliest race. All right, they're of the Australoid type. belong to the north parts of the island. See that? Like he said earlier, the Australoid type, and he also calls them the lowest type of humanity. That's his racism coming out. He's trying to call them lower life forms, inferiors. So once again, when you read these documents, it's not that he has preference. It's not that he has preferential treatment towards the so-called black man. In fact, it's the opposite. In fact, he has prejudice. He's still a racist cave dweller. Okay? But anyway, we're going to go down to this part where he states, in his remarks upon the Aborigines of Tasmania, Mr. Bonswick refers more than once to their kinship structurally with certain prehistoric Europeans. So the prehistoric Europeans looked like the Aboriginal Tasmanians, okay? And also that tells you what, like I mentioned this before in another video, who they call Japheth in the Bible. Japheth was not a so-called white man like they want you to believe, okay? Japheth looked like the Australian Aboriginal, okay? And I did a video on that. I think I titled it Original Europeans. I went really in depth on that. But now we're going to go out here. The earliest inhabitants of North Britain were Kumbophalic, boat-headed, approaching to a Negroid or Australians. Let me read that again. The earliest inhabitants of North Britain were approaching to a Negroid or Australian. That's because you had Negroes and Australoids. You had so-called Negroids and you had Australoids, both inhabited Britain at different times, but they were not of the same seed line. Okay? But, you know, anyway. So there's that, right? And Cheddar Man, they mentioned Cheddar Man, right? Cheddar Man, dark skin, Briton. Well, Cheddar Man is a very old person that they found in Britain who they claim had dark skin and blue eyes and so on and so forth. This is what they claim he looked like. Well, if you take a look at Cheddar Man, he looks a lot like an Australian Aboriginal. Let me put it side by side. This is Cheddar Man, what they say he looks like, and this is an Australian Aboriginal. Do you see the resemblance? Okay. But you know, we're gonna touch on Ireland in specific in a minute. You know, it's all gonna fall in line when I get all these slides out. He talks about the Australians. An Australian could be either the colonists, meaning the invaders, or the Aborigines. All right. Then he talks about the Irishman. He talks about the wild Irishman with his Gaelic. The wild Irishman in Gaelic means black Irishman, right? So you got on this part, he states, this page 227, by the way, if I didn't say that, Ancient Modern Britons, Volume 1. Early Scots as Picts of Galloway and as black Douglases. Those people were Moors or Gypsies, as just stated. So these people were so-called black people. You're going to say, no, it doesn't say black. He says Moors. Well, later on, he's going to say that the Moors were so-called black people. Okay? We're going to keep going. All right? Page 45. The British Iberians, Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 1. He states, the Iberians are styled swarthy and curly-haired. The word swarthy is rather elastic, for although literally Schwartz, yet it's taken, I fancy, to mean something not quite so dark as the color of a Negro. That depends on who you ask, because if you go to Samuel Johnson's 1755 dictionary, swarthy is compared to the Africans. It even uses the example. It says, like the swarthy Africans. But anyway, and we're going to get more on this on the Iberians later. But at any rate, if the small dark Highlander and the black Celt, see that? Look, black Celts to the west of the Shannon be assumed to be the descendants of Iberians, it may fairly be argued that with so much intermixture with fairer races during the last 2,000 years, the stock must now be lighter skinned than my bad. So he's saying, oh, you know, reason they had a little lighter complexions than that of a black person is because they were mixed. And I've heard that before all the time. Why is that? Because they think all so-called black people look like the Sudanese. You know, like the Sudanese color. All right, the dark skin color, which is a lie. You don't have to be mixed to be light-skinned. Myself, I'm light-skinned. My parents are both so-called black. Their parents are so-called black, and their parents are so-called black. But Anyway, and to prove that you don't have to be mixed to have light skin, just look at the San people, or the San people, depending on how you pronounce it. The San people of South Africa. These are them. And they like to call these people the oldest tribe, one of the oldest tribes in the world. These are the San people, as you can see, light skinned. All right, but that, Anyway, reading on, and so you don't have to be mixed. You don't have to be mixed to get a lighter skin, like he tried to say. And they even tell you, they say the San are the oldest inhabitants of southern Africa. They have lived at least 20,000 years. This is according to them. You already know when they say the years, they be going off with the years. But regardless, the region's earliest inhabitants, they say 30,000 plus years, yada yada. San people, the Bushman, the San tribe, first people of Africa. All right, as you can see, they have a light skin complexion, or some of them do. There are dark ones there too as well. That's because black people come in all different shades of brown. African American skin varies from caramel, almond, hazelnut, toffee, Java, espresso, ebony, and deep ebony. We don't all look like the so-called Sudanese. But anyway, keep going. It may be fairly argued that with so much intermixture with fair races during the last 2,000 years, the stock must now be lighter complexion than then. And its representatives of the first century, see how it says first century? Of the first century must have been actually as black as Negroes. So this black Celts, Highlanders, all right, the first century versions were as black as Negroes. That's what he said. That's what he said. We're gonna, I got a lot. Like I said, I got a lot, man. It's definitely probably gonna be an hour video. Hell, it might be a 2-hour video. I don't know. But as a matter of fact, Pliny characterizes their complexion as Ethiopian. That is, as black as an Ethiopian. As black as an Ethiopian. It may be that the curliness of their hair was of the same nature as Negroes also. Now, who is he talking about? The small Highlander, the black Celt, who are descended from the Iberians of the first century, look just like Negroes, according to him. Okay? Thus, the Negritos of Huxley, the owners of Suscos as found in Caithness, may have been allied to the ancient Iberians. So the ancient Iberians, black as Negroes. That the wild, now check this out. This ties in with Ireland. That the wild tribes of Ireland were black men is hinted by the fact that a wild Irishman in Gaelic, a black Irishman. So a wild Irishman, as in Gaelic, is a black Irishman. And that some of the natives of Scotland, as well as of England, were of the race also. So a race of so-called Negroes, of wild Irishmen and British. All right, and you also had the Australoids there as well. You see that? I'm not blowing no smoke, man. These are all facts. All right, it's just something they didn't teach you in school. But these are facts nonetheless. But did I already read this? I think I actually skipped this, did I? Hold on one second. Nah. We're on time. All right, so page 62, Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 1. All right. The savages, wild men, or woodmen of heraldry, sometimes represented as white men, sometimes as black, are almost always naked with the exception of wreath round about the head and another round about the loins. All right. He's talking about the Australoids, which even now, a lot of them don't wear many clothes. But anyway, he calls them naked savages. Once again, this is what he's calling them. So it's not like he has a admiration for the so-called darker races. He doesn't. The wild Irishmen, or black Irishmen, presumably of the same race, were the same. See that? Black Irishmen. All right. There may be some doubt as to the island here meant, but whether it's Ireland or Scotland, the remarks just made apply equally well. Ireland had its Crute knew as Scotland had its Picts. And we're going to learn about the Picts as well. The Picts were an Irish clan. And yes, the Picts, the ancient Picts, they were so-called black, which he's going to say later on. But if Father Innes meant that Ireland was inhabited solely by men entirely wild, there is too much evidence to the contrary to admit of such belief. That's right, because all of them weren't walking around naked, like they weren't. But the existence of a race of wild people is told by the Irish legends themselves. So these wild people, remember, he stated that the wild Irishmen and the black Irishmen are a race of one and the same. So the wild people are the black Irishmen. They even still exist in Irish legends themselves. Okay, and that brings me to this: like when you hear about a myth, a lot of times when you see people say the word myth, it's a negative connotation, and it's usually trying to discredit something or say it's fake. But a myth doesn't have to be fake. All right, a legend doesn't have to be fake. Like the term that people use most of the time today is the second use of the word myth, which is a widely held but false belief or idea. That's what they use today. But a myth can also be, dictionary, myth, noun. A myth can also be a traditional story, especially one concerning the early history of a people, the Aboriginals, or explaining some natural or social phenomenon, and typically involving supernatural beings or events. Okay? So, once again, a myth doesn't have to be fake. A legend, tale, fable, saga, allegory, folk tale, story. All right? Legend. All right? Irish legends themselves speak of this black Irish race. All right, now let's keep going. Oh, look. A myth. Myths are stories that are based on tradition. Some may have factual origins, while others are completely fictional. See that? Now, keep going on. Page 219. Man, this is going to be a long video. I'm already 20 minutes in. We're going to keep going, though. You know, and it's 2:25 in the morning, so I'm doing this for y'all. You're welcome. 219. Highlighted portion. Or if they resembled their kindred in Ireland or the previous century. The wild, glib black Irishman described by Frischart. All right. And he says, as already remarked, those savage warriors were more akin to Cheyennes or Comanches, meaning the Cheyenne or Comanche Indians, meaning how their culture, than to the variety of modern Europeans. In other words, modern Europeans, he means Caucasians, right? We go on to here. The Black Douglases of history were thus the ancestors of certain families of modern gypsies, the name of Douglas. So Douglas actually was the name of a black inhabitant, a so-called black person. And you should know a famous so-called black man now by the name of Frederick Douglass, the famous abolitionist. All right, that's another lie they try to tell you that, oh, these black people with Irish names, Welsh names, and all these names, they got these names because they, from their slave master. No, because yet, believe it or not, you had a lot of so-called black people that were deported from Europe to America, Jamaica, as well as the Virgin and Caribbean islands. Anyway, we want to keep moseying on down, man. I ain't even got to like the big stuff yet. But anyway, page 12. The Neolithic race has consequently been identified with the Basques and the Iberians, and extreme exponents of the theory do not hesitate to speak of the Iberian ancestors of the people of England, recognizing the racial characteristics in the small swarthy Welshman, the small dark Highlander, and the black Celts. Alright? Iberian descendants, the black Celts. He talks about Italy, the British Isles, Spain, Gaul, Northern Africa. Alright, but anyway, we're going down to here. As Iberians, they are of a swarthy hue. And swarthy means black, by the way. According to one of the conjecture, they are nearer the Eskimo than the Tasmanian. According to the other, they are more Australoid than Mongoloid. Alright, so they look like Australoids, you know. The Iberians. Alright, aka the Etruscans. We'll get on that later. All right, swarthy, dark colored, especially of skin. Schwartz, black person. All right, and he said akin to the Australoid. That's what that means, man. Dark complexion. And the black celts were mentioned by another man by the name of James H. Anderson. He wrote a book titled Riddles of Prehistoric Times. He was also born in the 1800s. See what he had to say. Page 57. Riddles of Prehistoric Times. He mentions the black celts as well. The Basques in Spain and France, the little dark Welshmen, the Scotch and black celts to the west of the Shannon River in Ireland, as well as the same kind of men in Brittany and Aquitaine in France. The Ganchis of the Canary Islands and the Berbers in Africa are all probably remnants of the race. So the black celts, northern Africans, the Berbers, and he goes to Ireland, Brittany, all right, Aquitaine, Canary Islands. All right, let's get in this next part. Page 58. Watch this. Watch what he says. Same book, Riddles of Prehistoric Times, page 58, which is the next page. He states, look, Galen, Island, and Brittany. He states, the first inhabitants, let me repeat that. The first inhabitants of southern Europe, northern Africa, Arabia, France, and the British Islands were a race of small men. All right, 4 foot 5 inches according to him. You know, that's debatable. They were of a slight build with dark complexion. They were an African people. So the first inhabitants of southern Europe, Africa, Arabia, France, and Britain were an African people. All right, southern Europe, that's like Italy, Poland. I think I actually included southern Europe countries. Southern Europe countries, Italy, Spain, Portugal. You know, the list goes on, right? I got another guy that mentioned the black celts, a guy by the name of Charles Squire. Not a lot is known about this author. He's more so faded. But he wrote a book. Charles Squire wrote a book, Celtic Myth and Legend, Poetry and Romance. And this book is $2,000, by the way, $2,600. In that book that I got, it states on page... see, I'm still recording. Yeah, I'm still recording. Page 19. We're going to go to the highlighted portion, of course. The earliest of these two races would seem to have inhabited our island from the most ancient times, and may, for our purpose, be described as aboriginal. So they were aboriginal, and they were there first. All right. It was the people that built the long barrows, in which is variously called by ethnologists as Iberian. See, they keep mentioning the swarthy Iberians. Mediterranean, Berber, Basque, Salarian, Esquarian race. All right. In physique, it was small, swarthy. It was short, swarthy, which once again means black. Dark hair, dark eyed, and long skull. And they had a Hamitic language, a Hamite language. And language belonged to the class called Hamitic. Alright, they're part of the North African tribes. One of the North African tribes that he mentioned were the Abyssinians and the Berbers, right? The Abyssinians and the Berber. Well, first of all, Aboriginal means first, earliest, existed from the beginning. And here's a picture of Abyssinians. Abyssinian, mixed races, the Abyssinians. And they had a Hamitic language, was Hamites. Alright. And he also said that they had the earliest of the two races. And they also mentioned that they mixed together. Remember earlier, David McRitchie said they mixed together. Well, when you look at a North African today, they're mixed, believe it or not. This is a picture of a Moroccan North African. This is a picture of the rapper Drake. The rapper Drake has a so-called black father and a so-called Caucasian Jewish woman are his parents. And he looks just like a North African. That shows you that, yes, they have mixed lineage, believe it or not. They didn't always look like this. But anyway, reading on. Another guy's going to comment on the Iberians, the swarthy Iberians. This is William Boyd Dawkins. He was a British geologist and archaeologist. He wrote a book titled, and he was also born in the 1800s. He wrote a book titled Early Man in Britain and His Place in the Tertiary Period. Okay? Early Man in Britain and His Place in the Tertiary Period. We're going to go to page 323. Page 323. He states, from the intimate manner in which they are associated with the Iberians by classical writers, coupled with their agreement in small stature and swarthy complexion, and I always get these cave commenters who like to say, oh, swarthy can mean that he just had a 10. He just had a 10. He was swarthy complected. No, because he's going to say non-Aryan at the end. Swarthy complexion. They were related to one another. They belong to the same non-Aryan stock. Non-Aryan branch of the human race. When he says non-Aryan, he means non-Caucasian. It is also by no means improbable that the small swarthy Etruscans, whose empire extended in the earliest times, according to history, north of the Alps into Tyrol, and who held dominion also over Lombardy, belonged to the same non-Aryan stock. So they were non-Caucasians, which means what? The Etruscans were dark-skinned people. They did not look like how they lie, try to tell you what they look like. All right. Anyway, they were contaminants and were driven away from their ancient possessions by the same invading peoples. So they were driven away by invading peoples. And we're going to get on these invaders later on. In my belief, the Iberians of France and Spain, the Silures of Wales, the Ligures of southern Gaul and northern Italy, and the small dark Etruscans are to be looked upon ethnological islands isolated by successful invasions. Pointing out that if we could go deep enough in past time, we should find that the whole of Europe was inhabited solely by swarthy non-Aryan population. So the whole of Europe was inherited by non-Aryan, non-Caucasian populations. Okay? And he mentioned the Etruscans, which were also known as the ancient Etrurians, and they were in Italy. All right, that's where their home base were, and they were conquered by the Romans over processes of time. Well, speaking of the Etrurians, aka the Etruscans, Godfrey Higgins, a guy born in the 1700s, he was an historian, he was a magistrate, an antiquarian. Godfrey Higgins wrote a book titled Anacalypsis. All right, and he mentioned the Etrurians having a dark skin. In page 216, he states, Mr. Franklin makes an observation which is new to me, that the ancient Etrurians had the countenances of Negroes, meaning they had the same skin complexion as Negroes, the same as the image of Buddha in India. All right, and so he says the Etruscans had the same complexion as Negroes. So these are fake images of the Etruscans. That's fake images, fake news. And he also mentioned the Negro Buddha. That's because there is a Negro Buddha statue. This is the Black Buddha. This is a African Hamite, or at least it looks like one. Look at the ears. They look identical. You can learn more about that in the video I did. India was black, in fact. But now we're going to go to Ancient and Modern Britons Volume 2. And we still got a lot of things on Ireland. You know, I kind of went off topic and just started touching on European history, but I do that a lot. If you know me, you know I go on tangents, but it is what it is. Anyway, so we're going to Ancient Modern Britons Volume 2, where he states that Ancient Modern Britons Volume 2, this is just on the back of the book. It says, the author makes it clear that some of the most ancient and important Scottish clans, see that? Important Scottish clans, including Douglas and MacDougall, had names that tell us that Negroes were the progenitors of their clans. He's talking about Negroes. Okay, the Royal Scots. Alright, now anyway, let's go to Volume 2, Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 2, page 434. We're going to touch on the Irish some more. He states, the Gaelic words that signify black Danes, black Scandinavians, black Irishmen, and black heathen. Alright. The black army, the Nigra Gentes, which is where you get the term Gentile. But anyway, which Gentile is Latin for the word gentilis. But now watch this. So he mentioned black Irishmen, black Scandinavians, black Danes. Now watch this. In the song of Roland and in the traditional John of Rampayne story, the phrase "as black as ink," say that again, "as black as ink," leaves no room for doubt. Neither does the Welsh story of the girl whose skin was blacker than the blackest iron covered with pitch. Alright? Dark brown or black complexion. Alright? Moorish. Alright? Pliny's adjective, which signifies black as an Ethiopian, may be held to denote the darkest of all the skins. No modern gypsy, therefore, can be regarded as the pure-blooded descendant of any black European race. So the modern gypsies are not related to the original descendants of the black European race, pure-bloods. Alright? Black as the Ethiopian. Also, Huxley said black's the Ethiopian for the Egyptians. I wonder why. But anyway, now we're going to talk about the blue Irish, the woad stains. The blue Irish, they were so-called black. What I mean by blue Irish? The woad stain, the woad stain people, the blue people that they depict, had to put the smiley faces on because she had the things out, and he had his, he had his Johnson out for some reason, and I had to block that out. But so when you see these people that have the woad stain, what Mel Gibson and Braveheart and all that, now watch what he says about these woad stained people. Watch what he says, and they did not look like this. Page 378. Now we're back on Ancient Modern Britons, Volume 1, page 378. Go down to here. Will Marshall's gypsy gang in Galloway. So the color of the people whom Caesar styled green men and blue skins is described by Pliny as Ethiopian, as black, as a blackamoor. The same parallel seen in the Gaelic means for a blackamoor. Alright? What is Dwayne Dub? A black man is one part of a country, is Dwayne Gorm, a blue or green man. And another, in the Gaelic word, a wild Irishman signifies literally a black Irishman. In Ireland, that a black man is a blue/green man. We're going to touch on that in a minute. And as it is in Ireland, that a black man is a blue-green man. All right? The wild tribes of Ireland were blue skins or green men, which means they were black. Also during an undefinable period. It's an allegedly undefinable period. I bet you they know it by now. But anyway, so he says that the black man is interchangeable with the blue man and the green man. And even to this very day, that's the case. When you go to Etymology Online website, you type in the word Negro. When you type in the word Negro, it'll say Negro, black skin race of Africa, black. Dark, sable, dusky, black, right? But when you go down to here, it says blackamoor, Middle English, Ethiopian. But you go down to here, it says a blue man. So that checks out. Blue man, black man. All right, a blue man. All right, you go to the Oxford Lexicon. A blue man is historical. A black man, an African, a blow man. All right, Middle English Dictionary entry, blue man. A blackamoor or Negro, blue man land, Ethiopia. All right, Thomas G. Gentry, born in the 1800s. He wrote a book, long book. I'm not about to read the title, but y'all see it. Family names from the Irish, Anglo-Saxon, yada, yada. Right here, he has the word Douglas. Remember, he mentioned Douglas earlier. Douglas can mean black, dub meaning black, or dub meaning black, dark. All right, and the glass meaning gray, dark green, or dark gray. So the black or blue. The black, blue man. Okay? Frederick Douglass. Okay? Famous person. And just recently, they stopped calling black people blue. Look. This is on The Guardian. It says, blue, no longer a person of color added to the Irish lexicon. So blue is no longer a person of color added to the Irish lexicon. So very recently, they just took it out. So black people were always called blue people. So going back, these are fake images. Obviously. But, now it says here, the Irish language has long wrestled with the description of people who are not white. Fear dub, to refer to a man of any color with black hair or black skin. They also called fear man to the devil, demonized us. Blue person meant a colored person. Dwayne date. One version evoked creatures from the film Avatar. So the blue skinned people of Avatar represent black people. The other echoed language associated with apartheid of South Africa. Alright? The Nilotic people of Eastern South Sudan. Look, what she's got on, what she's got on. Did you know that Avatar was created based on the Nilotic people of Africa? We already know about the blue man. I proved that. Alright, and they bring that home because in the opening scene when the wheelchair dude, I don't remember his name, when he gets his own avatar, his own blue body, you know, he takes off running, and what does he see? Well, he takes off running and he sees two blue men playing basketball and talking in black slang. That was to let the viewer know, that was in the know, that the blue man is the black man. Okay? Then you go to page 382. It says a black man was so often blue or green that the terms became interchangeable. So interchangeable means identical, exactly alike. So a blue man is a black man and a green man is a black man. Which is why they turned Mr. Manhattan into a blue-skinned man. When you have all those, once again, the cave commenters, why did they blackwash Mr. Manhattan? They have no idea that the blue man represents the black man. That's also why they had Jamie Foxx play Electro. That's also why they had Zoe Saldana, I believe that's her name, play Gamora, as well as this chick from the Not V. I don't remember her name. All right, reading right on. Page 46, Ancient Modern Britons, he states, any Latin dictionary, any old one at least, will tell you that Moorus is a Moor, a blackamoor, or a tawny Moor. And Shakespeare uses the word Moor as a synonym for Negro. So in the old dictionaries, the word Moor meant Negro. So they try to tell you, oh, I'm North African, Berber. That's the new stuff, man. The old dictionary, like he said, is for Negro. As the last word bears nowadays a somewhat restricted meaning, it may be better to take the old-fashioned blackamoor as the nearest English rendering of Moorus, signifying therefore any black or brown-skinned man. The blackamoors were the painted people. The painted people. Okay? And we actually have somebody that looks like a Moor. They had Mr. Popo. Mr. Popo was a black man, and they censored him. They turned him into a blue man. And we know that Will Smith played the genie in Aladdin, the blue man. And they're both dressed like Moors. Specifically Mr. Popo. Blue, green, right? 47. Now, although in the Gaelic of Scotland, a Negro is known as a black man, he is known in the Gaelic of Ireland as Dwayne Gorm, a blue or green or woad-stained man. Alright? And while the Scottish Highlands, the adjective gloss is used to signify both swarthy and green. We proved that earlier. Let's go back. We proved that. Glass means green. Alright? Green or dark gray, right? We proved that. Let's go back. Swarthy or green in Wales, green or blue. Latter country, the Gaelic Gorm was an equivalent to brown. So once again, the so-called black man is the blue and the green man. Okay, I proved that, which means that the blue and the painted people of Ireland, the blue skins, the green skins, they were black people. That's what he's telling you. Okay, page 136. It was noticed some chapters back that Dwayne Dub, a black man, and Dwayne Gorm, a blue or woad-stained man, are one and the same. One and the same, no denying. Even in what was that show called, Doug? They had the blue character known as Skeeter. Skeeter is, and then that's the creator, Jim Jenkins, and he stated, yes, Skeeter is indeed black. He represented an African American, and he's a blue skin. And they had a blue skin and a green skin in Doug. Okay. Now this is a book titled A History of the Middle Ages. We're going to go to page 219. It talks about the Vikings in Iberia, but we're going to go to the highlighted part, right? The underlined part. It says, thwarted in Muslim Spain, the Vikings raided the shores of northern Africa, where they routed up large numbers of what they called blue men and black men. So the blue man and the black man are synonymous. And look, they were sold to the Irish. They were sold to Ireland. I wonder why. and I went more in detail on the black man is blue on this video. The black man is blue. Look if you want more information on that. Now let's touch on the Picts. Who are the Picts? The Picts are a group of peoples who lived in North and in the pre-Viking age, the early Middle Ages. All right, the Picts. We go to Google, you type in the Picts. These are the people that you see. I forgot to cover them up. She had her titties out. But these are the pictures that you see. But these, once again, are fake images. Because the Picts, you're going to find out, were black. He's going to tell you. Page 198, Ancient and Modern Britons. The Picts. Since we see that the people known specifically as the Picts of Claudian, were of black complexion. All right. The early Scots. It becomes a question whether the chief asks were the early Scots were not of a kindred hue. So he's saying yes, they were of a kindred hue. Basically saying were they not of a kindred hue. So yeah, the Picts were of a black complexion. They did not look like this. All right, he's going to touch on it some more. Page 201. All right, both Picts, Spaniards of their time, were seen to be both Picts, and they, along with indigenous British tribes inhabiting the interior of England and a large part of modern Scotland, as well as the black and painted races of Ireland. Okay? Black Danes. So, the Picts proper and the Black Danes being both Picts and both Moors and both being black. So, yes, you did have Black Danes. All right, and by the way, Danes actually go back to the tribe of Dan in the scriptures. I'm going to do a video on the Danes at some point. All right, but the tribe of Dan, of the 12 tribes of Israel, goes back to the Danes as well as the Spartans. All right, and where does that tell you what they look like? But anyway, so far, however, we have only decided with regard to the early Scots that they were the associates of swarthy, piratical, painted races of black Eskimo, Negrito, Mongoloid strain, without reaching the conclusion that the Scots themselves were of the same complexion. They were of the same complexion. All right, and I actually have a picture of what they would really look similar to, since they want to say they were naked savages, allegedly. What they would really look to, they're still African tribes, so-called African tribes, and myself, I'm not even African. But this is an African woman with blue dye. All right, I had to cover the nips. This is another black Ethiopian, blue dye, the blue skins. All right, so these people probably look more so like this or something along these lines. All right, so that's a lot on the Irish. Now let's deal with the intruder. How did Ireland look, or how did Europe in general look the way it looks today? Well, like I told you, believe it or not, like they like to tell you, the so-called white man actually doesn't come from Europe. I know, shocker. The intruder. All right, let me introduce the intruder. Now watch what this guy says. Watch what this, once again, this is a Caucasian wrote all this. And he referenced other Caucasians to prove his point. Other Caucasian writers, historians, anthropologists, etc., right? Now we're going to go to page 16. Watch what he says. Ancient Modern Britons, Volume 1. The question of the origin of the white races, which has now long held supremacy in these islands, meaning its current inhabitants, scarcely enters into the present inquiry, which has to do more with their colored predecessors. What is a predecessor? Precursor, forerunner, antecedent, ancestor, forefather. The one that was there before them. They were colored, people of color. Okay? Now watch what he says right here. They do not come from Europe. All right? They come from Asia, specifically Central Asia, and originally they're from Mount Seir. But anyway, let's get to it, right? So, Wall of Forth, as we see hints that the home, if not the cradle of the white race, was Europe. So he's basically saying we think that, or people think that the cradle of the white race is Europe. But watch this. But there seems little probability of any of these theories ever becoming substantiated. We have just seen that many scientific men hold that there are some grounds for believing that portions, at least of Europe, have formerly been inhabited by black, tawny, and copper-colored races. Alright? We're also learning that the white race has not always been confined to the Eastern Hemisphere. Once again, so-called white people do not come from Europe. That's point blank period, man. Alright, so Europe had a Caucasian invasion. They had a Caucasian invasion. Alright, even when you look up PNAS report, right? It states, the questionable contribution of Neolithic and Bronze Age European craniofacial form. Now watch what this has to say. And by the way, the Bronze Age was still operated by the dark skins. Okay, just an example of a Bronze Age society. A Bronze Age civilization of Crete was a people known as the Minoans. These are the Minoans. Alright, as you can see, the Minoans have the brown complexion. This is a Minoan fresco, so-called black person. These are fake images of the so-called Minoans, right, that they run out. Now this is an unaltered Minoan painting of the Bronze Age. They got the afro, so-called black, all up through there, brown skins. But anyway, back to this research, right? Now watch what it has to say about European DNA. The surprise is that the Neolithic peoples of Europe and their Bronze Age successors are not closely related to modern inhabitants. So the Bronze Age inhabitants of Europe, in other words, the Minoans and people like the Minoans, the brown skins, they are not even closely related to the modern inhabitants, to the modern European. Okay? It is further surprise that the Nephilim of Israel, Phoenician Ram, was assumed to arise with a clear link to sub-Saharan African. What, a person of Israel is related to a sub-Saharan African? Wait, no way, right? But anyway. Now watch this. Neither Sammeltizing the Cro-Magnon as once suggested. So basically he's saying that the Bronze Age Europeans actually don't really have a close match of DNA to the modern inhabitants. Why is that? Because there was a Caucasian invasion. Okay? I don't know why I included this, but oh yeah, I guess I included this because that Israel comment, sub-Saharan African. So funny how people believe that the Hebrews were white, right? But Moses married a Cushite woman, a black-skinned woman. So what would his child have looked like? And even when you go to the Mishnah, which I don't believe, and the Mishnah, it even tells you that the Jews were of boxwood, neither white nor black. That's what he says, allegedly. You know, which I don't agree with the Mishnah, but even then they tell you that the Hebrews were not Caucasian. But anyway, so the history of Central Asia, right? Go down to here. It says some studies have also identified this region as the likeliest source of the populations who later inhabited Europe, Siberia, and North America. Indo-European, yeah, the Eurasian invasion. All right. The population who later inhabited Europe were Central Asians. Where is Central Asia? Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. And these are those people, so-called Caucasians. But guess what? They're in Asia. They are Central Asian people. And they're all Caucasian. All right, now watch this. Hold on, I gotta get a drink of water. But he states, this is Science Daily. Let's see what they have to say. They state, new branch added to European family tree. Europeans descended from at least 3, not 2 groups of ancient humans. Now watch what he has to say. Now this is a Eurasian woman. It says, it mentioned the indigenous hunters-gatherers and early European farmers. We know who those people were. We already proved they were either Australoids or Negroids. But watch this. Also, a third ancestral group, the ancient North Eurasians, who contributed genetic material to almost all present-day Europeans. So almost all present-day Europeans have that Eurasian DNA. That's because they come from Central Asia. All right, and for those of you who don't know, the Caucasus Mountains, where the name Caucasian, the Caucasus Mountain is in Asia. All right, it's an intersection between Asia and Europe. All right, it's between Europe and Asia. The Caucasus Mountains. That's where you get the term Caucasian from. All right, the portion of the region north of the line of Europe and the portion south of Asia. Okay. Now, there's a place called the Russian Steppe. All right, which is from Hungary to Mongolia. The Russian Steppe. We know that Mongolia is where? Mongolia is in Asia, right? All right. And we also know that Russia, for those of you that don't know, Russia is actually mostly in Asia. Once again, these people come from Asia. Russia spans the most Russia's landmass in Asia. Russia spans the northern part of the Eurasian continent. 77% of Russia's area is in Asia, and only 23% is in Europe. So the majority, 77% of Russia is in Asia, man. These people come from Asia. All right. Now this is Alexander Winchell. This is what he had to say. He was a geologist. He was born in the 1800s. He wrote a book titled Our Remote Ancestry. Let's see what he had to say. Let's see where we at. 56 minutes in. I got probably like 30 slides left. Let's just keep going. So in his book, Our Remote Ancestry, we're going to go to page 246. Now watch what he says. Indo-Europeans are known to have been in Europe as early as 2000 BC. So as early as 2000 BC, that means they weren't there before that. And what is an Indo-European? An Indo-European is a Caucasian. All right, an Indo-European, 18th century term for a white race of mankind. He derived from the people who lived in Caucasus, Caucasoid, European, or white, synonymous. So Indo-Europeans are known to have been in Europe as early as 2000 BC. Wait a minute. Now watch what he says in the same book, page 247. Watch what he says was here before those Indo-Europeans. They came from Atlantis in northern Africa at the time when the Hamitic Berbers were gaining possession. They overran the Spanish peninsula, founded cities, built a navy, carried on commerce, extended their empire over the countries that later were known as Gaul and Britain, held Italy and Sicamnus, where Rome was founded. All right, mind you, these are Hamites, right? They are originally a branch of the sunburnt Hamitic stock, and they were there what? As early as 2500 BC. So at least they were there at least 500 years before the Indo-Europeans. They were at least there 500 years before the Caucasians, man. And if you're still finding everything that I said hard to believe, if you're still finding everything hard to believe, let me explain how these people are known for invading places. Let me give you an example of this, right? So, in the United States of America, right? In the United States of America, 26 out of the 50 states of the United States of America have Indian or Native American names. So the states are named after Native American names, right? That's what this says, right? Now watch this. Why am I bringing this up? Hold on, Salakia. All right, why am I bringing this up? Because I'll give you just one example. Massachusetts is a Native American name. All right, Massachusetts. Massachusetts, meant great hill or small place. All right, an Indian name. All right, for the Massachusetts tribe of Native Americans. Now, the population of Massachusetts, so despite the name, what they got the name, the population of Massachusetts, there's only 5,000 American Indian and Alaskan Natives alone. 5,000. Meanwhile, you have 4 million Caucasians in Massachusetts. So the mass majority of a place after a Native American name is conquered and inhabited by so-called white people. So that goes to show you that just because something has an Indian name doesn't mean that the Indians live there anymore. So-called Indians. All right? And they decided to keep the name. We're going to find out they're known for keeping the name. Now they'll tell you what, I'm a proud Massachusetts person. And he mentions this in his book, Ancient Modern Britons, page 203. Right? He states, And he takes about them keeping the names. The first advent of the gypsies in Scotland. Farther, the wild black Irishman of Queen Elizabeth's reign, with his plaited hair, his swarthy skin, and his Finland haunts, and virtually a gypsy. His island was of the mother country of the Scots. The Moors were Picts. The gypsies, Moors, were Picts, but all substantially the same people. Alright, the Scots were gypsies. It must never be forgotten that the people, now watch this, it must never be forgotten that the people who made Scotland an independent nation were not Scots. Alright, now we're going to go down to here. Watch what he says. They just keep the names of places that they did not originate from, just like Massachusetts. Now watch what he says in this red underline. He states, it is true they identified themselves with the earliest races and readily assumed the name of the some of the ideas of the adopted country. So they just took the names of the adopted country, just like they did Massachusetts. And they overran it. They invaded it. All right? But they were not Scots. So these people were not Scots. They were invaders. All right? Then he talks about how Sir James, Lord Bruce Knighthood, he came from a race that boasts of his ancient aboriginal blood, which signified him being a black man, black sword complexion. So I just want to touch on that. But he just told you that they identified themselves with the earlier races. They took the name Scott and readily assumed the name and some of the ideas of the adopted country, just like Massachusetts. They kept the name. Meanwhile, their population of Native Americans is 5,000, man. And they did that with all these continents, man. They did that with all these continents. Believe it or not. All right? Because guess what? These same people that are proud, they have that Euro pride. They have that American pride. They have that South American pride. They have that Australian pride. All right? Countries with the largest white or European descent populations. Look at that. All over there in Asia, which I believe this is actually Russia. Europe. The Americas, Australia, South Africa, right? Now watch. Now my point is, right, so not only did they take over Europe, they did the same thing with Australia, man. All right, like these people have a history of that. So if you find this hard to believe, just know they invaded Australia and they invaded America. All right? Australia, 87% Caucasian. But we know that the original Australians were dark-skinned people, the Australoids. All right? Meanwhile, nowadays, these are your Australians. All right? You see, there's been a history of genocides all over the world. All right? And the genocides are caused by the same people who then inhabit the lands and even inherit some of the customs as well as the names. You got the Australian genocide, the African genocide, and the American genocide. All right, and that's what nowadays, after all these genocides, now you have white South Africans, Australians, Americans, and they act like they've been here the whole time. All right, and they're even proud of it, man. And the scriptures speak about this. I'm gonna get the scripture in a minute. They're even proud of it. Look, I'm proud American, not afraid to be patriotic. All right, look at that. I love bacon, proud, and like I said, I love bacon because Esau was compared to a pig, as was Rome. Proud to be an American. They say one nation under God got this cross for Tammuz. You know, they allege to believe in the Bible. They allege to believe in Jesus Christ, but they don't. It's all a front. But guess what? Habakkuk 2 and 5, right? Habakkuk 2 and 5 speaks on these people who steal all these lands, all right, and inhabit them. All right, I'm going to start at Habakkuk 2, but 5 is what I want. All right, we're going to go to Habakkuk chapter 2. All right. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Okay? So it will not tarry. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by faith. So the soul of this man, his spirit is off as hell, man. All right? The spirit of Esau is wicked. All right, and let me state this. I didn't mention this before, but believe it or not, All so-called white people are not Edomites. All right, because due to these, depending on the seed line of the father, is what makes the nation. Believe it or not. So you got somebody like Rashida Jones, for example, which is Quincy Jones' daughter. Rashida Jones looks like a so-called white woman. Logic looks like a so-called white dude. And the list goes on. What's that dude? Blake Griffin. Specifically, Blake Griffin's son. He looked like the Gerber baby when he came out. But so all so-called white people are not Edomites. But guess what? The true so-called white man is in fact an Idumean. Anyway, now all that being said, watch this. Habakkuk 2:5. He also, because he transgresses by wine, he is a proud man. Proud to be an American. He's a proud man. All right. Neither keepeth at home. He who enlarges his desire is hell, and as death, it cannot be satisfied, but gather unto him all nations, and heatheth unto him all people. So he gathers onto him all nations. That's why when you go to these continents, he's in all these places, man. He's in South Africa. He's in North America, South America, Australia, parts of Asia, Central Asia. He's everywhere, man. But his home is actually in Mount Seir in the Middle East. So he's a proud man that never keepeth at home. Why is that? That's because of his blessing. When you go to Genesis, the blessing of Esau was the sword, and that he would inherit the fatness of the land. All right. So he took all these lands and he ruled by the sword. He ruled by death, murder, robbery. All right. Death, military might. But guess what? So let me read that again, man. He also, because he transgresses by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home. He's not in Mount Seir, who enlarged his desire as hell, as the grave, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. That's why you have that melting pot. And the Romans had an ancient thing called the bundle of sticks, which was basically their version of a melting pot. Now watch this. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, a riddle, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his. How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. All right, so it's woe to him. Woe meaning death and destruction to him that increases which is not his. All this land is stolen land, man. Believe it or not. All right. Shall they not rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be the booties unto them? Because thou hast spoiled many nations. See that? Because thou hast spoiled many nations. All right. Because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the rent of the people shall spoil thee, because of the men's blood, and for the violence of the land, of the city, and of all that dwell therein. All right. And all these nations are turning against Esau, Edom right now, man. They're forming the BRICS organization. And in World War III, all these nations are going to be going against America. All right. And the Western European powers. But some of the Western European powers are going to flip in World War III. But that's another video for another day. But, yeah, they're all going to turn on this man. All right. Why? Because he increased that which was not his. He stole it. And all the people that they spoiled are going to spoil them, man. All right. And more so proving that America is Edom. Obadiah chapter 1. All right, verse 1. The vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord God concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from the Lord. An ambassador sent among the heathen, arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. All right. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised. All right, they are greatly despised. All right, and they're a small population in comparison to the other nations of everyone around the world. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? So there's that pride again, that proud to be an American, right? Watch this. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, this will I bring thee down, saith the Lord Yahawah. So they exalt thyself as the eagle and set thy nest among the stars. That's talking about America. All right, they got that pride, just like the proud man that never keeps it home, man. So that's that. But first, before I get out of here, man, I'm going to answer that other question that I've heard before. All right, the original inhabitants of Ireland were not black. We actually proved that they were. Then he says, remember, black people really don't like cold weather. You know, that is that is pseudoscience, man. that black people don't like cold weather. Let me prove that real quick. Let me prove that real quick before I get up out of here. Before I go, right? Like when you read about the Ice Age, the so-called Ice Age, you know, which is really the flood, really before the flood. That's another video for another day. But the so-called Ice Age that allegedly happened, right? It also occurred in Africa, but the Africans did not evolve, specifically Southern Africa. Accordingly, 300 million years ago, Southern Africa was covered in ice. Allegedly, I don't believe the numbers, but and yet the South Africans are still black. All right, and they were functioning in the cold weather. They didn't go extinct. And watch this. Coldest country in Africa is Lesotho. Lesotho is in South Africa. Botswana, South Africa, Swaziland, Lesotho, Zimbabwe, Namibia. It's got snow and everything, right? So let's go to Lesotho, which is a day and 17 hours away from me if I took a flight. Damn. All right, Lesotho was 31 degrees Fahrenheit yesterday. All right, 31 degrees. The winters can be as cold as 19 degrees to -4 degrees in the highlands. So -4 degrees. Well, guess what? These are the Lesotho natives. Look at this devil. But these are the Lesotho natives, so-called black people, with outfits suited for the cold. These are the Lesotho people. They've been living there. They live in the snow. So that whole black people don't like the cold thing is debunked. Lesotho. All right, you see that? So-called black people in the snow. They live there, native there. The Lesotho tribe consists of the Khoisan. Remember I mentioned the San people a while ago. Khoisan or the Khoisan. Later came the Bantu and eventually the Swana peoples. They all living up over there. They didn't evolve any white skin. All right, the Khoisan, the San people. All right, they still got the black and brown complexion. Okay? Meanwhile, in Ireland, oh, black people don't like the cold. Look, Ireland, the average winter is only 40 degrees. So miss me with that, man. All right, 50 degrees in Ireland, it don't get that cold like that, man. So they can miss me with that. They also had the Australoid people that lived in the snow place known as the Ngarigo. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. They were an Australian people of the snow. This is what they look like. And they lived in places like the Snowy River. And this is what they look like, man. So you had so-called dark-skinned people that lived in cold environments, man. That thing that they be trying to say, that shit is debunked, man. Debunked. They lived in the cold as well. Debunked, man. But anyway, I'm going to get up out of here. And I'm going to prove in a later time that evolution is rooted in racism. All right. Evolution is rooted in racism. And when they say when apes conquered Europe, they're not talking about actual apes. Think about that. All right, it's rooted in racism. But anyway, man, that's still on that, man. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. Long video, overdue, but I had to do it, man. You know what I'm saying? And with that, I say peace to the 12. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father, the Most High Yahawah. In the name of His only begotten Son, yahawashi. Yahawah is the name of the Heavenly Father, who is commonly known as God. And yahawashi is the Savior of the nation of Israel, who is commonly known as Jesus Christ. I want to say shalom, which means peace to you brothers listening and learning. Brothers doing this work in truth and sincerity. You people that are listening and learning. And to you elders that's been out here doing this thing before me, man. Keep letting people know, man. But I've been new for a while now that there are Irish black clans in Ireland that they don't talk about, but they did exist. It's just on the hush hush. It's on the low. All right. Hopefully this was an edifying lesson, man. It is now 3:17 in the morning. I'm finna get up out of here. I'm gonna say shalom once again, which means peace. I'm out.